Peace, family. My name is Vicki Dillard for African Diaspora News Channel. Thank you so much for tuning in, family. Certainly, you all, maybe, I know quite a few of you all, over the past couple of plus years have seen me do a few broadcasts on the fact that Russia has a reputation for calling the United States and her Western allies Anglo-Saxons, and how white America and white colonizers don't like that. And I have posited that Russia, even though they are, a fair skinned people, white people, they're making, I feel, they making it clear to the world that we might look like them, but we ain't them. Let me hit the gavel on that. And so I went back to an older article of His Excellency, I call him, Mr. Lavrov. I absolutely love the foreign minister for Russia. I feel he's so intelligent. He has such Russian swag, and I appreciate the way that he stands up to the rest of the world with a wide and unrelenting understanding of the history of not only his country, but the interconnections between that and the world. So he just puts them to shame time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. I think a long time ago I discussed the fact, I don't recall which broadcast it was, but I remember talking about one time I was surprised to see how some of the globalists openly talked about when was Mr. Lavrov, the foreign minister for Russia, when he was going to step down. If they don't sit down somewhere, every time they're intimidated by somebody, they like to throw that kind of mess out there. Talk black to me, somebody. Well, anyway, family, Mr. Lavrov, this is an older article from 2008, as far back as that, where it says Russia and the multipolar myth. This was written by Bobo Lowe, which the name speaks for itself. I'm going to leave that alone. The long and short of it is, this person, they were calling out Mr. Lavrov in this particular piece. And in the paragraph, about the third paragraph, it says, in reality, well, first of all, the headline says Russia and the multipolar myth. So the people, this writer, this international writer, even back then, did not want to accept the fact that the world was changing and that it was not just going to be a unipolar world, meaning the West and the United States running stuff, but a multipolar world where world powers are equals. Isn't that okay? Shouldn't that be all right? Not when you're dealing with a colonizer. Watch what he says here. The third paragraph says, in reality, much of the multipolar bombast is humbug, as even its advocates tacitly recognize. The star turn of the Moscow conference was an address by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. In it, he emphasized the importance of a new international architecture and condemned the rigidity of the, quote, Anglo-Saxon model. They go on to talk about, however, instead of talking of the global multipolar order as one might have expected, Lavrov gave pride of place to the notion of common European Christian civilization. There was barely any reference to multipolarity, while China and India were only mentioned in the context of the most fleeting nod to the BRICS concept. Now, of course, again, that was 2008, as I mentioned before, some years ago, and they were nervous about him calling them Anglo-Saxons then, specifically the Anglo-Saxon model. And I promise you, he's been absolutely correct ever since. I think I've discussed other mainstream media publications, global publications, that have specifically used that phrase and how they consider it to be anathema to what they stand for. I believe there's something to that, especially if you study the history of some of the Anglo-Saxons who were absolutely acted in many instances as uncivilized. So I think Russia wants us to know there's white people and then there's they kind of white people. But nevertheless, I'm specifically using that phrase in this context because guess what? Russia has had a long-standing relationship with the continent of Africa and its 55 nations. And they recently had, guess what? A forum, a global summit on the continent of Africa. Watch this brief clip.
Ministers and diplomats from more than 50 African countries gathered for a two-day conference in the Egyptian capital for what is becoming an annual meeting with the Russian Federation. While US and European sanctions pile up on Moscow because of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Russia got promises from Africa to expand trade and economic ties.
Seychelles aligns itself fully with the joint statement to be adopted by the ministers, reaffirming our unwavering commitment to deepening the Russia-Africa partnership. This partnership is not merely diplomatic. It is historic, strategic, and profoundly meaningful. Our relationship is anchored in a shared determination.
Trade and investment levels. During our meeting, there was consensus on the necessity to resolve several crises which are obstructing development. There is no peace without development and no sustainable development without security.
The Russian Federation is interested in practical cooperation on key sectors that are in line with the African development agenda, like infrastructure, energy, health, like ICT. So we are a big continent, 55 countries, 1.4 billion population, and we have natural resources. So of course the continent was colonized for a long time, and we had also linked with our partners from Europe, the US, but also we want to have a partnership as many economic blocs as possible, including the Russian Federation, China, the Middle East.
The Partnership Forum was established in 2019 with a head of states meeting in Sochi and then in St. Petersburg in 2023. In 2024, the Russia-Africa Summit decided to hold an annual meeting on the ministerial level. This is the second ministerial meeting and the first to be held in Africa. Through this conference, Africa and Russia renewed their commitment to honor the principles for global governance through respecting international law and United Nations resolutions. Africa's welcome to stronger ties with Russia is a stance against global unilateralism and a call for balancing the continent's ties with world powers. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Okay, family. Baby, don't you all know that the globalists are tripping out? That they have reaffirmed their connection, that it's going to continue to be strategic. It's going to have everything to do with not only resources, scholarships, cooperation, financially, fiscally, and otherwise, but on so many different spheres. They are collaborating and they are doubling down on their relationships and connection, including security, which hints at military stuff. Let me tell you something. These connections are very nerve-wracking to the United States. And these Anglo-Saxons and these Yankees, that's me throwing the word Yankee out there, are real nervous because Russia and the continent of Africa and her 55 beautiful countries are putting them to shame by still moving forward strategically, notwithstanding all the sanctions and all of the pressure that the United States and the West are doing, the mess making, them going into the countries, starting terrorist organizations and claiming that it's somebody else, talk black to be somebody, going in, mess making, blowing up stuff, tearing up stuff. Baby, it's only going to last for a minute. Please understand. There's a reason why they're doing it. They're desperate because the powers that shouldn't be know that their time is up. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it below. My name is Vicki Dillard, beloved. Be sure to go to my website at vickiplanet.com, vickiplanet.com, and be sure to share the broadcast. I can't wait to see you again.